Okay guys, I'm going to do something a little bit different today. This is going to be an overview of the early days of the state of the meta in Alliance Insight format. I will briefly talk about the positioning of White Forest in this video too, but I'll leave that to the end, so for anyone who's not interested, you don't have to watch that. There have been two events so far, really substantial events so far in Alliance Insight format, that is YCS Providence and the Austria National Championship. Technically, there were a bunch of other events, most of them bigger than the Austria Nats, that were also post-Alliance Insight release, but they tended to be in places where either the set wasn't legal because they didn't have access to it, like practically speaking, logistically didn't have access to it, or not everyone had the cards. So I'm just going to be focusing on these two events right now. So first of all, let's get the obvious stuff out of the way. Malice and Mitsurugi are the best decks by far, and if you're not playing one of these decks, it means that you're not trying to win the event, which is fine. A lot of people are playing decks just to try to top, and you can do that with many other different types of decks, but if you want to win, you probably just have to play one of these two decks. I think that Malice is probably inherently the stronger deck, but there were more silver bullets for Malice, and based on people's deck lists, it seems like people were over-prepared for Malice and maybe somewhat less prepared for Mitsurugi, which also had a wider variance in the types of list people were playing for it. So for example, we have here in YCS Providence, this was top 4. This was, I think, my favorite Mitsurugi profile. This is the pure version that is going super, super heavy with not only pre-prep, but also Pot of Extravagance and Pot of Prosperity. This also chose to main the Wosu, which is one of the cooler cards here, because you basically get a searchable Kaiju from your engine, and also the Magatama, which typically, if you're not on a pure version, would not be playing this, but this has a lot of flex here, because this can target a face-up card your opponent controls and destroy it, or it can also ritual summon a Mitsurugi ritual monster from your hand. So it's a pretty flexible card here, and of course maining the Purification, which you can afford to do when you don't have a bunch of other bricks like Node and Cross, etc., if you were playing the Ryzeal version. I didn't see anyone in the top who was playing the ALIN version, unless... I wonder if Thunder Theory topped. I cannot remember. Thunder Theory is... a guy I've been following on YouTube for a long time who has a really, really good channel with like some pretty sick stuff. Was it this one actually? This may be his deck profile right here. So, oh yes, I'm pretty sure this is him. So this guy was playing the Planet Pollutant virus gimmick. So this thing tributes an alien monster and destroys all face-up monsters without a counters your opponent controls. And then until the end of your opponent's third turn after this card's activation, you place an A counter on each monster they summon. So how the gimmick works is there's this guy, which says that neither player can activate the effects of monsters with A counters on them, and so it's basically like a floodgate. I'm not going to go through that combo right now, but anyhow, I'm just showing that Mitsurugi does have quite a bit of variation. Like, it is possible to play the Ogdoadic version, you can play a bunch of different Ryzeal versions, or you can also play the pure version, which I think is probably the coolest one. Okay, there's also some variation in terms of the Malice decks. So if we start with, actually let's go to, this was top 8 at YCS Providence. So this was Lucas Sacco, who's probably one of the more well-known names right now. And he's still choosing to play not only TB11, but also GWC, which is now also somewhat contentious. So TB11, GWC, these 3 cards here, the reason they're contentious now is because you have access to a lot more extenders, like the March here, the Backup, and the Wizard. It's now easier to be able to play through interactions without having to rely on a trap. And you don't really want to draw a bunch of traps, especially if you go second, because you're basically just breaking your hand by playing a bunch of these cards. And so they're kind of high variance cards where if you don't draw them, that's great, you have access, but if you do draw them and your opponent doesn't, you may just lose because your opponent had a better hand than you did. But right now, it seems like both options are still viable because, you know, he did get top 8, so this can't be bad. We also see that some people are choosing to main AI Meet You to be able to get an additional search for your engine, and some people are not maining it. Some people are siding it because you have to take out the Charmies anyhow, and whether you are main decking 3 Charmies or 6 or even 9, you still need pretty good cards to side in when you're going first. Not a lot of people played Salesman. It is an interesting card, though. You could call lots of different types of things based on the matchup you're going into, so I guess that's worth noting. Some people are choosing to play Nibiru in combination with Dominus Impulse, I guess because if you are charming your opponent and they make a huge board and you haven't interacted with them, they can overextend and play heavily into the nib, but of course if you use Impulse from hand, you will turn your nib off, so you have to nib before you Impulse. Okay, so going back to... this one was Jib's list, so this was top 8 also, and this shows a version of the list where you play only a single trap, and this is much more heavily optimized for going second. And the risk here that you're accepting is if you're playing 6 Charmies or even 9 Charmies and you go first and you draw a bunch of Charmies, it's a lot harder to play through your opponent's interactions, because not only are these not extenders, but it's not even like you've drawn a Droll or an Ash or something that actually works if you've gone first as a hand trap. So they're taking that exchange and they're saying that my engine is so good that I can play with, 1 or 2 Charmies in my hand anyhow. I guess there is a little bit of space saved and a little bit more space debatably for engine if you only play 1 MTP, but I'm not sure if they're actually trying to optimize engine here by cutting those 2 slots. I feel like they're more likely just fitting in other types of non-engine or whatever. Okay, what else can we say that's interesting about Malice? The Topologic Bomber Dragon is like a tech, I guess, that people think is good, because this is one of the ways that you can beat the Chaos Hunter when you're going first and you can't actually combo properly, and so you're trying to blow up their Chaos Hunter. This also is a pretty good card against Malice, because Malice does not play well into mass removal or even spot removal. Like if they go normal summon Dormouse and you blow up the Dormouse, they will often have another push after that, and if you can cycle the Bomber Dragon twice, they may just not be able to play at all. So I feel like this is more of a meta call type card rather than an actual good card in Malice, because cycling this card is not efficient. If you think about what is required for you to trigger this, like you have to have a monster special summon to a zone a link monster points to, so you typically would be summoning to one of these zones. You destroy all monsters in the main monster zones, but that includes your monsters as well. So I'm not really sold on this card, to be honest. I feel like the Allied Code Talker is a little bit more reliable, and so in this one was Lucas Sacco's, right? Yeah, so in Lucas Sacco's list, he did choose to play the Allied Code Talker, and I feel like if you were building for locals or regionals, this card is probably just better. It's more generic and it's more brainless. Not in a bad way. Actually, it's a good thing to have a brainless boss monster rather than thinking about when are you going to make a mistake by losing resources because you're cycling stuff with Bomber, and then do you use your March here in this spot or whatever. I feel like this card is probably just generically the better one. Okay, so still people are playing Haggard. I feel like this card is just good. Everyone says that it's bad, but I feel like this card is still generically one of the better cards in Malice. 2 Linger Rerolls, because one is usually in the combo, and the second one tends to come up when you're trying to play into Malice boards, because this negates a trap. People were always saying that Link Spider was not needed before, but I feel like it's just easier to not have to think about not making mistakes and playing in very particular ways, and this card is just an insurance policy that makes it way easier to just go like, okay, I'm going to use backup or wizard from hand now and just continue playing regularly. So I think that's most of what I wanted to talk about in terms of the decks being played here. I do like the variation in options, and I'm not going to go over specific White Forest lists right now, but I think if we take a look at the overall representation here, Malice is probably the hardest matchup. The thing about Mitsurugi is, based on the dice roll, it can be very much in our favor or not, let's say ignoring stuff like Droll, because if they go for Murakumo plays, they can't wipe your board when you have access to Diabels, but if they go first, you typically have to go slightly wide in White Forest to begin your plays. Like you go for an LZ and then you summon your Sylvie, and then if that gets blown up before you can make a Synchro Summon play, you're usually in a pretty bad spot. And your deck doesn't just play off of a single card, like Mitsurugi can just play off of like a single Habakiri, or they can get their Habakiri off of the Aramasa and continue or whatever, but we can't really do that in the same way. So when we go a little bit wide and we get blown up by a Murakumo, and also we happen to then have to pay another card as cost just to continue playing, that's very, very difficult to play into, I think. So I feel like that matchup is more dice roll dependent, whereas against Malice, I think Malice just wins the matchup naturally because their ability to continue drawing hand traps over and over again is really, really strong. And so when they've gone first, it's not just that you're playing into a board that's really hard to beat. You don't have good silver bullets going first into it. So when you side into your Lancias and whatever, you now have to win 2 games in a row if you've lost the dice roll. So I feel like this is just naturally the worst one for us. Dominus Impulse is generally an extremely strong card right now, and it's also good against us. So that's something else that doesn't really help. And if you've been interacted with even once, depending on where it was, you may be cut off of your Omni Negate, which means that the decks that are playing triple nib will have a much easier time beating you, because you may not be able to protect your Diabels or your Vengeance into the nib if you've been, stopped, like, because, I don't know, they impulsed your Hallowed, or they played in some weird way and you didn't get access to Ilia Sylvia. So that's basically it. I don't want to make this a very long video. I'll do my more in-depth stuff as usual after this. And I think that's all I wanted to cover for right now. If you have any suggestions or you have ideas on things I haven't covered yet or other potential threats in the meta, please let me know. If you want to join the Discord, I'm pretty active there. Feel free to @me, and thanks for watching.